right, cool. Welcome everybody to the first UHND podcast in 10 or 11 years. Given all of us are holed up in our houses right now, we figured what better time to restart the UHND podcast. So while you are only looking at me on screen here, I actually have two names that most of you all will remember or recognize from the UHND boards or from our articles. So, and I will actually let them introduce themselves. Let them introduce themselves first. So, let's see, Greg, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Greg Flamand, staff writer. I'm at Greg2126 on Twitter if you follow me there. I've been looking forward to my site actually doing a podcast. I've been on, me and my friend, we have a USC Notre Dame football podcast, and I've been on One Foot Downs a bunch. So I'm glad our site, we're getting going. We're getting with the times. It's exciting time.
Exactly. Yeah, here we go. All it took was a global pandemic and being stuck inside for multiple days in a row with no end in sight to get us going. Let's see, JD, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Jack Daniels here. First time talking on the UHND podcast, like you said, in over 10 years, Frank. So this is a little bit of a blast from the past. I think it dwindled out towards the end of the Weiss era, and the kind of come down after that. We never got it kick-started again, but this is a nice reboot, as you said, and look forward to the conversations. I know we've been talking about some really cool concepts to keep these going for future episodes. So also looking forward to getting those going. But before we talk Notre Dame football, I just wanted to get to the more important topics. What beer did you end up grabbing, Frank?
Yes, I ended up grabbing something called, and this my little virtual background was blocking it, but it's called Chaos Emeralds Double IPA. I got it because I figured chaos was pretty fitting for our current times, but it is an 8% double IPA. It gets the job done. How about yourself?
So before I came to my workstation here, I ended up grabbing two 12-ounces. One is a 40th limited edition Sierra Nevada hoppy anniversary ale. It is very delicious. It is 6%. And then, so that's what I'm sipping on now. And I just figured, depending on how long this podcast goes, I have some backup. So this one, my backup will be a Stone FML double IPA. So Fear Movie Lions. It is an unfiltered double IPA, 8.5%
Nice.
alcohol. So
nice.
Yeah.
And Greg, I know you're going back on like baby duty right after we get done with this, so I don't know if you're partaking in the beer portion of our podcast, but
that was an incredible description of a beverage. I was just listening in awe about the whole thing. You know what? Actually, our neighbor, he indoctrinated me into the White Claw.
Okay.
It's been all the rage, and I've just not really partaken. And he brought one over to me yesterday, and I had one, so I've got another one here.
All right, nice.
Very exciting time. Yes.
Fun fact: at the Notre Dame USC game this year, I think Jeff rolled his eyes at me and Kyle quite a few times because after tailgating for multiple hours, I was like, I can't drink another IPA right now, or I'm not making it to this game. And then Kyle and I switched to White Claw, and I think it saved the day. But I'm sure that will get us some comments to the 17 people that end up watching this video later. But
yeah. I think you paid for your transportation.
Yeah.
I think you paid for the transportation and the amount of White Claws you guys drank with the recycling that you might have been able to do.
Yeah, dude, those were good. I'm not gonna lie, especially if you're going all day. Like that was refreshing. But yeah, I don't plan on going that hard today. So the double IPA will hopefully do the job today. Also got a full stock upstairs of multiple IPAs for the next week or two. Just tried to buy as many variety packs as the beer store had yesterday, but which was crazy because beer store here was pretty much the busiest place that I've been in a long time, which was a little disturbing. But anyway, let's talk some Notre Dame football. Now that we've gotten the important stuff out of the way. Crazy time for all sports in general right now. Certainly unprecedented, I think, for what anybody's used to dealing with. But when it comes to Notre Dame, obviously impacting the Irish just like it is every other college football program right now. So what I thought we'd maybe start with talking about, since right now we would be talking about all the players that were getting us excited, for 2020, and all the players that were making moves, this spring, is, who are the players that you're most, disappointed that we're not going to be able to, to see at least, as much as we had planned, whether or not spring, anything, happens to make up for these practices at some point, we don't know. But who would be, some of those players? And I'm going to just say, you can't say Kevin Austin up front, because I think we all are extremely excited to see what Kevin Austin could do, and what he would have, what he would have done all spring. But who are some of the players that you guys really wanted to watch this spring? Let's see if either one of you want to go first.
I'll just jump in.
Yeah.
It hurts me that you took away Kevin Austin, because he's
That's
like
too
a myth
obvious.
at this
You
point.
also can't say Kyle
he's
Hamilton.
Well, listen, I'm saying Kyle. You can't take Kyle from me. All right.
All right.
Our beloved, beautiful boy Kyle.
Yeah.
We're just going out there. I just want to see him play. It has been so long,
Mhm.
and I miss seeing him. So, but yeah, Kevin Austin, and he's reached mythical status at this point. I mean, his exploits are just going to get greater and greater the less we get to see him. So, but just what I wanted to see was basically two things. I wanted to see the running backs, and I wanted to see the corners.
Mhm.
I feel like running back is pretty up in the air right now. Tony Jones is gone. Jafar, what's he gonna be? Was he gonna be kind of what we saw at the end of last season, where his role was very severely diminished from what we thought it was going to be at the beginning of the year?
Yeah.
And what are we going to see from Jameer Smith and Sebo? And we know we got Chris Tyree coming in. Like, where would he fit in? So I wanted to see a good amount of that, and then just the corners. We lost Troy Pride. Is Tariq Bracy going to be the type of guy that can line up against other teams' number one wide receiver? Can he hang with someone like Kevin Austin? Can he hang with Braden Lindsey, the transfer from Northwestern? Can he hang with those kind of guys? And then just like, what do we have in the early entries, like Ramon Henderson and Caleb Offord and those kind of guys? So that's basically what I wanted to see. And obviously now we don't get that.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
Yeah. What about you? What about you, JD? Any players in particular? I have a few listed over here that I know I was looking forward to watching this spring.
I was as a position group, I was definitely leaning towards the wide receivers. Like, even if you tell me to leave out Kevin Austin, fine. Like, what is Keys going to bring to the table? What is Xavier Watts, Ben Skoranek? Is he able to come in? And it sounds like he's already done some nice things in terms of leadership and just physical capability, almost in the likes of the talented duo from 2005 in terms of big-bodied wide receivers who can go up and reliably get the ball. So obviously speaking of Stovall and Samardzija.
Yeah.
So as a position group, probably the wide receivers, maybe also the secondary a little bit. But if I had to name one guy, I was just looking over the spring roster, and the one name that stuck out to me in terms of an individual that it's like do or die time is Jafar Armstrong.
Yep.
This guy was supposed to be kind of our home run hitter out of the backfield. The last year we saw glimpses of it. What was it, 2 years ago, and before he got injured, and it's just what can this guy do? Can we get almost a Sean Crawford style performance out of him, to where when he is healthy, like this guy is so dynamic being on the field, and that's what I'm kind of hoping. I was kind of hoping to see in the spring, and it'll be interesting to see if he does get that shot again.
Yeah, I mean, Armstrong's an obvious one. I think you guys both nailed it. Greg, you actually wrote, I was at like, I want to say it was like 2 to 3 weeks ago, but honestly, like days are feeling like months right now. So it might have been longer
Yeah.
ago or shorter ago that you wrote about. Like, what position, is Jafar's best position at this point? Like, is he just somebody that, he is dynamic, but isn't built to be a running back full time, and we could find other ways to get him the ball. I think that, we might have seen some of that experimenting this spring. And again, whether or not we end up seeing it at some point, who knows? But I mean, yeah, obviously, I would love to have seen him, stay healthy for a full spring and just see what he could do. You guys talked about the wide receivers already, but one, I mean, I wanted to see Lenzy this spring and see, we saw glimpses of him being that home run threat, at times, and we saw him, be truly dynamic with getting the ball and on the jet sweeps and end around type plays. But how is, our new offensive coordinator, which we haven't talked about yet, Tommy Reese. How is he going to find ways to get Lenzy the ball? Can Lenzy be a legit starting wide receiver, or is he going to, can he do the same Will Fuller type transformation where he went from a really fast guy one year to, being a guy who is an every down starting receiver. So he was one I was really looking forward to watching this spring. Another guy that has almost fallen off the map, and Notre Dame fans seem to have forgotten a little about, is Houston Griffith. I was really excited to see what he was going to do moving back to safety this year, because it always kind of seemed like his natural, position, and the Notre Dame tried to kind of force him into some roles just out of need in previous years. But now that he would be moving back to safety, both of those positions open. Obviously, Kyle Hamilton's going to lock down, have one of those positions locked down. But I was hoping to see, Griffith, step up and start to play like that top 100 overall, prospect that we saw, or that we saw coming out of high school. So he's one that,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that kind of reminds me back to Harrison Smith and all of the moving around that he did, and was never able to get any solid traction. And then all of a sudden, boom, you put him in the right position, and now he's in one of the best safeties in the league right now, and one of the highest paid, and
Yeah.
has been an All-Pro. So I wonder if Griffith can get some of that magic as well.
I hope so. And speaking of safeties, while we're at the position, have you guys seen the pictures from like the 2 days or 3 days, however many it was, of spring practice that we actually got of Isaiah Pryor, and how ridiculously jacked that guy is for a college football player? I mean, when I saw some of the pictures, I was like, all right, you know what? Like, I know he didn't, he had his troubles at Ohio State somewhat, but I mean, he physically, like, you look at him and you go, okay, these are the kind of safeties that Bama has. These are the kind of safeties that Clemson has. And again, it's one of those where you're like, him not getting spring ball now, could be, or if he doesn't at all, it could be something that plays a role in terms of, who ends up starting at safety in, come the fall. One other player that you guys didn't mention that I'm gonna throw out there is Ian Book, because I mean, honestly, we go as far as Ian Book takes us in 2020, and I'm really interested to see, of the challenges and struggles that he had at times in 2019. We all have kind of now heard and read the rumors of, the discontent amongst the coaching staff, and how much of that played a role in in Book's performance. And in 2020, are we going to see the Ian Book that we saw starting with that touchdown drive to end the Virginia Tech game, who went on a tear in the month of November, and then carried that over to the bowl game? Or are we going to see, the Ian Book that struggled a little bit when he faced some better defenses? And he's just one. Again, we go in as far as he takes us in 2020. What are you guys' thoughts on Book in general going into spring, going into the year?
What do you got? I'm curious what you guys feel about, the idea that he's kind of reached his ceiling. He is what he is.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what you guys think about that, because I have kind of a view on where, like, that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he has, to be honest. I think there's still a level or two in him that, that we haven't quite seen. And we we've seen glimpses of what he can be. I mean, I think there's another level that he, that he can still reach. Whether or not he does, I don't know. But I mean, I don't think that we've seen him peak, just yet. I don't know, JD. What about you?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys remember, but Dan Orlovsky is an analyst for ESPN, and he called Notre Dame's bowl game against Iowa State. And then within a couple weeks after the bowl game, he also was on Pete Sampson's podcast. I believe it was the Shamrock, or if I'm not mistaken, or it might have also been the Irish Illustrated podcast. I can't remember which one of those two. But the Notre Dame guys interviewed Dan, and he talked a little bit about Ian Book and the relationship with Chip Long, and kind of Long's comments back last summer about he needs him to be the damn game changer or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And Orlovsky's comments, who's widely considered as one of the bright young analysts in the game, mentioned that, no, that's exactly the wrong step you should take with somebody like him. He's not Tua. He's not Trevor Lawrence. He does very well what his skills are meant to be utilized for, and you don't need him to be the damn game changer, as Chip Long said, but you need him to take his skills and do efficiently and precisely what we saw back in 2018. And so I'm on board that train. I don't think we need to raise Ian Book's ceiling much more. I think if we can get, if say his ceiling right now is at whatever, 95, say his PlayStation score is 95 out of 100. We don't need him to get to 98 or 99. We just need him to execute at 95 and not regress back down to 90, So that's kind of the analogy that I think Orlovsky was trying to communicate, and I've bought into that philosophy. I don't necessarily want to see a huge leap in Ian this year. I just want him to go back to doing what he was successful in 2018 and what we saw the last half of this year.
See, when I think about Ian, I don't think about like the idea of him being a playmaker and that sort of thing. You can be a playmaker from, within the confines of what his game is and what his physical ability is. He's not the biggest guy, he's not the fastest or whatever. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but I don't think that they're inhibiting him as far as like, people looked at Tommy Rees and it's like he has a lot of physical limitations. I don't think of Ian Book in the same way, but I think that where he can improve, what his biggest weaknesses were last year, were just understanding where the ball needed to go.
Yep.
And I think that we saw that in the second half of the season after the loss to Michigan, when, Brian Kelly came out and kind of said, we changed the way that we coached him. They gave him a lot of open-ended situations. It wasn't just a script where you're just kind of going through the motions. They actually challenged him a bit more in practice. And then we saw him, really improve as a player. And I think that, working with Tommy Rees, a guy that he seems to have a better relationship with, that can help that, when you have somebody who you're comfortable with, who is explaining things to you a lot more. It's one thing when it's the quarterback coach, it's another thing when it's the offensive coordinator as well. So I think that's what we can see from Ian next year, is just like having a greater knowledge of like, this is why we're doing this. We're running this play. This is where the ball needs to go, understanding matchups. Because I feel like that's the biggest thing about being quarterback, is you just know where the ball is supposed to be all the time. When you look at a guy like Joe Burrow, 1 year, 2 seasons ago, he's a 58% passer. Last year, he's like 75%, and he's the engineer of the greatest offense in college football history. And I think a big part of that is just like he understands where the ball needs to go. He understands the matchups and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, there's a lot of bad statistics out there about, what it's like when a quarterback loses a good amount of the receiving production from the season before.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Ian's lost Chase and he lost Komet. And, those are basically his top two targets.
Yeah.
Losing the spring as well and working with someone like Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsay and Lawrence Keys, and those guys are going to be the frontline players. You have a new player in Ben Skoranek. You want to build a rapport with him. That's getting lost. And every school is going through that, right? No one's getting spring practice, but it'd be a lot easier of a transition if Ian had Chase or people of that experience. So that's kind of how I feel about Ian. It's just like I feel like it's there. I'm a little bit worried about the loss of time because he needs to work with these guys.
Yeah, man, and kind of go back to what you said, JD, about the 95 or whatever his rating is. Yeah, I don't think we need him to raise that at all. I think we just need to see. I think his next level that he can reach is consistency in his execution, and doing what we saw against against Duke, against Stanford, against Iowa State, seeing that again and again and again, and seeing it against the better teams. Because now he's going to come into the season knowing that against Georgia, against Michigan last year, against Clemson in the Cotton Bowl, he didn't have his best games. There's no hiding that, and I mean he's going to carry that in to next year. And will we see him be a different quarterback against Wisconsin? Will we see him be a different quarterback against Clemson? When they come into South Bend in November, again, assuming the college football season isn't impacted by the current situation outside of sports, and losing the practice is something potentially, again, losing all these practices is something that's going to, I think, unfortunately hurt his development and the offenses as a whole, especially with having a brand new offensive coordinator. Now, granted, the offense isn't going to change drastically. It's not like we're going from the triple option to going to what did Davey call it when we opened the 97 season in a 5 wide? He had a name for that offense. Now it's escaping me. But it's not that. It's not trying to go so drastic, from one system to another that losing practice time, will be totally detrimental. But I do think that there will be, we're going to miss out on kind of the full Reese effect. Essentially, with a lot